Are you part of the top neighborhood and community in the Upland metaverse? How would you even know? In this video, I'm going to cover the 8 metrics that Upland uses to calculate which is the top community and neighborhood, and even the rewards that you can get by being a part of this community.
I'm YK2012, founder of the Upland Guide. I'm here to unlock the secrets of the Upland metaverse. On this channel, you can find everything you need to build your Upland empire. Expert tutorials, winning strategies, pro tips and tricks, and a lot more. Hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to stay ahead of the game. Remember, knowledge is power, and in the Upland metaverse, that knowledge is truly your most valuable asset.
Each season there are 2 different competitions which help to establish what are the top neighborhoods in the Upland metaverse. The first is the Neighborhood Collection Spawn Competition, where any neighborhood that is not a collection neighborhood is entered into this competition. The neighborhood who has the highest points at the end of each season, using these 8 metrics that I'm going to detail in a moment, will spawn a collection and graduate to the next challenge for the following season. Depending on the neighborhood size, any player who owns 3 or 4 properties in that neighborhood will be able to place them in a collection where you will receive a one-time 450 UPX bonus, as well as add a 1.3 multiplier to the UPX earnings that you have on those properties. The second challenge, titled the Neighborhood Collection Upgrade Challenge, takes all of those neighborhoods who have reached the collection status, and they compete to further upgrade their neighborhood, even up to an ultra-rare collection. While doing so, they will increase their collection multiplier and earn more on those properties. In contrast to the previous challenge, which focuses on the total points, in this upgrade challenge, the focus is to show season over season percentage growth in these upcoming metrics. Each season, the top 3 neighborhoods will have an increase in their boosted earnings, while the neighborhood that comes in last will decrease their boosted earnings. And if you come last 2 seasons in a row, you will be removed from this second competition. One last reminder before we jump into these 8 metrics. Additional information about these challenges, metrics, leaderboards, and everything else you need to know can be found in the links in the description below on our Upland Guide website. And now on to the first metric. The most important thing that you can do as a player to show your allegiance to a specific neighborhood is by setting your permanent residence there. By heading into your own profile or someone else's profile, you can see where their Upland home address is. The first metric is the average number of residents with a designated Upland home address per property. So if a specific neighborhood has 100 properties and there are 30 people who have designated their home address in that neighborhood, the calculation of this metric would be 30 divided by 100, which is an average of 0.3 home addresses per property in that neighborhood. The higher that metric is, there's a sense that the community is stronger and has a lot of people working together. The second metric has to deal with the neighborhoods that have the most active players. The way that they look at this is by taking the players who have set their home addresses in that neighborhood and track how frequently they log in. If your neighborhood has players that not only define that neighborhood as their home address, but log in frequently and are very active players, this shows a strong sense of community. Metric number 3 is the average number of metaventures per property. This is going to take the total number of metaventures in the neighborhood and divide that by the total number of properties. Whether these are dev shops, block explorer shops, showrooms, or other types of metaventures, this shows that there is an element of commerce that is happening in that neighborhood. If your neighborhood shows that there are entrepreneurial people starting small businesses as metaventures in that neighborhood, this is another indication of a strong neighborhood. The fourth metric is the number of paid sends. So if you have more quote-unquote foot traffic that is coming to your neighborhood, which might be through treasure hunting or sending yourself to these metaventures in order to purchase something, that shows there's a reason to go to that neighborhood and that there's something going on there. Number 5 is the average UPX contributed to the community pool. The community UPX pool is an integral part of the Upland economy. The following are 3 different actions that can trigger UPX being transferred into this community. The first is venture dues that are paid by metaventure owners each month in order to keep their metaventure active. The second is 5% of sales on items that are purchased from these metaventures. This 5% is paid by the buyer when they purchase an item from a metaventure shop. The sticker price that you see when purchasing an item already includes that 5%. The seller does not pay this 5% because that is going to be factored into their venture dues. And the third way that UPX is transferred into the community pool is through property sales, where both the buyer and seller pay 5% of the price to the community pool. If you add up these three totals and divide it by the number of properties in that neighborhood, the metric takes the average of those totals and divides it by the total number of properties in that neighborhood. The higher that average is just goes to show that there's more economic activity that's happening in that neighborhood, either through purchasing things through metaventures or by trading of properties, because it's possible that more people want to start joining that neighborhood because they see that it's starting to rise up in the rankings. Metric number 6 deals with the average number of spark hours allocated per property for building of structures. It's important to remember that 1 spark is equal to 1,000 sparklets. So let's say there's a neighborhood of 500 properties where 300 of them have completed a small townhouse, which is 950 spark hours. If you take those 300 constructed properties and multiply by 950 spark hours and divide that by the total of 500 properties in that neighborhood, you're going to get an average of 570 spark hours per property. This metric gives an indication as to how developed that neighborhood is. We know that Sparklet is not just used in order to construct buildings, but it can also be used to manufacture items that you place outside of your structures on your lawns. And this next metric takes into account the average number of spark hours allocated for map assets that are manufactured per property. Let's say players want to decorate their neighborhood with custom mailboxes. Let's say there are 300 of these mailbox map assets on a total of 500 properties in that neighborhood. If each mailbox has 35 spark hours that are required in order to manufacture it, multiply that by 300 and divide by 500 total properties, you're going to get 21 spark hours per property on average. This metric goes to show how invested people are in decorating their properties and adding things that not only increase the visual appeal of that neighborhood, but underlying within those items can provide additional utility to different things on Layer 2 games in Upland. Now, before I talk about the 8th and final metric, if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please do so. It's also important in the future to remember that Upland reserves the rights to not only make changes to these metrics, but also to add additional metrics. It's quite likely that in the future there will be additional features that will be added to Upland that could fit well into showing how strong a community is and would make sense to be added to these metrics. So keep that in mind as you continue working to increase your neighborhood ratings and climb the leaderboards. The 8th and final metric has to deal with seasonal ornaments. Neighborhoods with more structures that have seasonal ornaments applied to them will see a boost in their neighborhood ratings. Not only will you be helping out your neighborhood, but you will also be climbing the leaderboard for the Seasonal Ornament Challenge, where you can win some great prizes as well. Consider watching one of these next videos to do a deeper dive into these neighborhood ratings.